Good morning, good people.
Try not to move your chair around too much.
This is the what's the podcast?
We haven't actually got a name for this podcast yet.
PhilosoPhodcast.
PhilosoPhodcast.
Philosophy podcast. I like philosophy podcast.
That's just so. It's
Three undergraduates talking shit.
Talking shit about things they don't have a full knowledge on, but still trying to gain something useful
I
from
would
it.
argue we don't even have a partial knowledge.
Philosophy and other shit.
Yeah.
Philosophy, open brackets, as close as we can get to philosophy.
Let's
Close
philosophy brackets,
Yeah.
kind of.
An attempt at philosophical
Yeah.
discussion.
Attempt.
Yeah.
Attempting philosophy.
Yeah. Maybe we should just talk about like who exactly we are and what is we're doing here and
Yeah.
these kind of things.
we're
Just to set the
undergrads.
tone.
We're undergrads.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're
who
undergrads.
wants to start the intros then? Who wants to introduce
Wait,
themselves?
I just fucking started something. You're gonna cut me
Sorry,
off
man.
already?
Go.
Jesus. Okay, so we're undergrads in our first year. Philosophy undergraduates, obviously. We've decided to do a podcast, just somewhere we can
Explore our ideas.
explore ideas,
Help develop them.
maybe get feedback from people if these do ever make it out into the big wide world,
Trolling is encouraged.
And ultimately get famous.
and ultimately make big bucks.
Yeah. I think you can get
Big
rich from a
bucks.
podcast now.
Big
Right, that's-
women.
That's what all the kids are doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
The fucking poddies.
YouTube millionaires.
Yeah, we're gonna be the next PewDiePoos.
Sponsored by Coca-Cola.
I heard Joe Rogan talking about something like that the other day. Some kids moved into his neighbourhood. Obviously, he's got a real rich neighbourhood.
Yeah.
And the kids bought like an $8 million house. And he's
Shit.
like 20, he's some famous YouTuber. I don't know who it is, but
That's
Is
the
it
way
Jake
forward,
Paul?
man.
I'm not sure.
Oh, don't talk about
honestly
that.
don't know. But that is an unbelievable amount of money to be earning from YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, just fucking do it right, innit?
Yeah. Well, we've missed the boat now. There was
Yeah.
there was a boom
5 years
for
ago,
it.
way easier.
It seems to me that
Well, we
the
need,
boom.
to
It's
catch,
been a
we
long
need to
haul.
catch the next trend to get on the VR.
Do the video.
They're talking about that as well. So you imagine you're actually sitting in the room with them while they're doing.
Oh,
a
it's like you're
podcast.
hanging out.
That would actually be
So
really
you could put
cool.
the
That'd be
VR
really
set and
intense.
We'd be like walking around, looking at the back of our heads and stuff like that.
Yeah, see what's going on in the
Pretty
room.
cool, wouldn't
That's actually an amazing idea. Like, we're
Yeah,
just
it
sat
would
there
be
doing
pretty
podcasts. People can literally walk around us in a room, right?
Yeah.
So what do we think about VR? Do we think that people are going to get lost in VR worlds?
Oh.
I definitely think so, because I mean,
Addicted to
games have gotten so popular, specifically because it's a way to avoid the real life.
Yeah, it's escapism.
Yeah, exactly. Before then, we had books, you know. Now
Yeah.
books are going down. Video games, RPGs, tabletop,
Yeah.
role-playing games. It's just a way to escape life.
It seems to be following a trend of, as time goes on, it becomes more and more immersive, and then the less immersive platforms seem to die out. So, like you say, with books, and then onto
Well,
like things like plays.
I think the less immersive ones, they sort of die off with people who are aiming for escapism.
Hmm.
Whereas, like, I mean, I know for a fact I've lost interest in a lot of games. If I've got an hour or 2 hours and not got anything going on, then I could just go on Smite or go on some sort of MOBA or something. Like, but I think definitely the less immersive games are just for the what they call it? They're not real gamers. They're the opposite of real gamers. Casuals, filthy casuals.
I think VR could be dangerous in a way as well. I think people are going to get
Definitely.
lost in virtual relationships. You're going to have
That's already a thing in Japan.
Well, they've already got like VR porn, haven't you? But I mean, you can
Yeah.
have literal VR girlfriends where you can go into your VR house with your VR wife and your VR family.
Well, I remember
And-
hearing the story. This Japanese guy was murdered by his wife. Because what happened is he was married to this woman, right? And he got a virtual wife.
Okay.
And she
told him to
she
murder him.
found out, and so she killed his virtual character. He tried suing her, and then she killed him.
Crazy, isn't it?
See, now
Mental.
I'm wondering if that would necessarily be a bad thing. It's like the think tank experiment, isn't it? If we can progress VR to the point where it is indistinguishable from reality,
Then what's the harm?
but a better reality, then is that not a better life to be living? If the people you're interacting with and getting relationships with in this VR world, is that not as enriching a life as it would be outside of the VR?
Yeah, it's the same with the Matrix, isn't it? Like,
It's definitely
do you really want to live in the real world in the Matrix?
Hmm.
Like, I'd rather be in the virtual world.
It's difficult, isn't it? It depends if you can get the same sort of thing from a VR relationship as you can a real relationship.
I don't think we're far away.
I agree.
Uh,
I completely agree. There'll probably be VR jobs soon as well. Somehow they'll think it up.
Yeah.
Honestly, I bet you a quid that
log
probably
into
is
your
already.
VR world, log into your VR computer and do programming or something stupid.
Yeah.
Like, you can probably do computer work from your VR. People won't be leaving the house. It'll be insane.
Yeah.
Everything will be done by it. It'll be insane. And then even when you relax, you just watch a VR podcast.
Morally, is this a good or bad thing?
I think that's a good thing because it allows you to make more choices and follow out more choices without having to worry about the implications on other people.
Well,
Yeah,
surely
they're not other people.
the implications, the dire results that could happen. Surely that puts extra value on making the right decision. If there aren't any repercussions, or not as much as real life, then you don't care what decision you make because you could just, it's like Skyrim, you just load it.
But maybe that's a more enriching experience where you can make mistakes and not have to suffer the consequences of them. You can live out your sick, twisted fantasies, get them out of your system, and then everything will be fine again once you reload your save.
Either that or your fantasies start eating you alive because you enjoy them so much. And I don't know how damaging it would be to a person's psyche to be living in what is a fantasy world all the time, because it's always going to be, are you really going to have many negative things going on in this world? Like, you're not going to want to play a game that's given like negative influences from you. You're never going to learn anything. You're never going to go through any hardships. It's just going to be...
Well, sticking to that point, I remember a while ago, like, I was playing Sims 3, so this was years ago now, but I was playing Sims 3 a lot, and I kept loading and saving the game and reloading it and stuff. Whenever I did something, or I was testing out different ideas, and then when it came to going to high school, I'd go to high school and I'd do something stupid or make a mistake or something like that I didn't want to happen. And in my head, I'd be trying to reload it, and then I'd realise, well, actually, I can't reload it.
Yeah.
Like, I think like game addiction. I'd probably say I was addicted to games at the point. I used to spend 3 hours before high school on Assassin's Creed at that point. So I think game addiction is a serious problem. So I'd argue that this sort of normalisation of escaping the world, it becoming a whole culture, not just acceptable, but a whole wide culture, I think it's dangerous.
But I think the reason it's dangerous at the moment is because you don't live within that virtual world. It can only last for so long, and then eventually you do have to leave and re-enter reality. You need to continue with all these obligations. But if you can exist almost solely within a virtual reality, and you don't have to face that real world reality that you're potentially neglecting.
Yeah, you have a good point. If you just don't leave.
Yeah, if it is your reality.
Possible as well, isn't it?
I mean, eventually it probably would. Eventually, I don't think it will be a thing, but it's definitely possible.
Google Earth are doing a thing soon as well. You're going to be able to, like how you get the road view on Google Earth. You just do that on your VR, and you can just walk around on your VR.
Wow. That's
everywhere in the world. So
I'll tell you what, mate, I would
can
straight up be
explore
addicted to that.
cities.
I would
That
straight up be
insane.
addicted to that.
That would be insane.
Like, mate, you could just turn up in a temple in
It's
China,
gonna
man.
be such a crazy world.
Be
isn't
chilling with some Tibetan monks. They don't even know you're there. That'd be
Get
sick.
some like ambience music playing in your ears. Just like an empty
You
street.
don't need to.
right?
You can hear them chanting and humming. That'd be sick.
You'll be able to like walk into the shops and meet other people with their virtual
Oh,
headsets.
that's
Oh my
wild.
God.
That's wild.
It's not like
That would be-
implausible, is it?
That would be
It's
a
very
world.
possible
That would be
that
literally
happen.
two worlds overlapping with each other.
Yeah.
Except the VR has the advantage because you get to see both worlds.
Yeah.
That'd be mental.
You walk into a shop and it'll say like, we have 5 guests and 15 virtual guests in here. It'd be something stupid like that.
Overcrowding might be a problem though. Like you've all like.
You can't overcrowd in a VR world.
Well, no, but if let's imagine your avatar, other VR people can see you.
Yeah.
They can see your avatar. So it's literally a society on top of a society. People who aren't in VR cannot see you.
They'll just
Other
have servers.
people in VR can.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, like
They'll
a
have servers, wouldn't they?
If
Yeah,
it gets
but
really
it-
popular, it'd be servers. But then
Yeah.
again, when there's loads and loads of servers, it kind of takes the fun out of meeting new people. Like
Yeah.
if it's just one
You better just
server.
switch server maybe, but there'll be a limit to how many
Imagine like
people on each
everyone's
server.
queuing up to get like virtual ice cream.
But I mean, to digress to your point, Tom, about what was it? You said something about you wouldn't be able to face any real trials and tribulations in a virtual world.
Yeah, that was a little thought. Whereas I don't know, I mean, maybe if
I
you're
think we already
meeting with
can.
other real people,
Mm.
you still could have some hardships. But I think you could definitely avoid a lot of hardships in a virtual world as well.
But that's an interesting thing. Like, if in a virtual reality anything can happen, you could have instances where I don't know if you ever played the Heavy Rain games, but you get put
hardcore.
into like a roguelike where your choices have the repercussions they do within that instance, so to speak, and you can artificially create all of these struggles and hardships for you to go through and try and work your way around to develop your character. And ultimately, you don't have to get the PTSD or the huge negative emotional effects, because the repercussions will only last so long up until the end of the instance. But you can come out of it potentially having learned something as well.
But you're like I mean, in a role-playing way,
Yeah.
you'd still have that repercussion. That would be part of your virtual character. Like that'll be part of your role-playing character. The problem is though, tryhards. They're just in it to win. They don't care about.
They're gonna like
enjoying
meta their character.
meta life, man. That'd be sick.
I wonder if you'll get like a new case of PTSD from people playing like extreme games or
And the internet
extreme
gets
horror
turned off.
games or
Yeah.
stuff like that. You know.
Oh, yeah,
It'd be
yeah.
a new case of PT. You could do like
Oh man.
some sort of extreme skydiving where it's so realistic you shit yourself.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I know that like last year, apparently some really good horror games came out. Those in VR would actually lead you to panic attacks and
yeah.
shit.
And then
Yeah.
your kid gets hold of it and plays a VR horror game and then he's ruined for
Mentally
life.
scarred, yeah.
He has to go through virtual therapy after that.
Virtual therapy.
Should we bring up one of these?
Yeah, let's
talk
move
about
on to one of
philosophy.
our potential, slightly pre-planned topics. Do you want to lead, Tom? You just pick one and we'll have a little chat about it. See what comes up.
War.
What is it
What
good for?
is it
War.
good
War
for?
and its implications. So,
Its implications.
is a person in war, so let's say you've got someone who's frontline infantry, are they to blame for the murder, even if they are in a unjust war? So are they guilty of any moral wrongdoing, or are they morally okay to
Well,
commit
who have they killed?
let's
The
say
enemy
let's-
soldiers,
let's-
Someone
let's
else
say-
with a gun.
Let's say they dropped a bomb and they killed soldiers and a couple of civilians.
That's difficult, man, because and I do know that I think it's the UN. It's some big old company, right? A just war, it still counts as a just war, especially against the war against terrorism. You know, I think I'm just pulling this out my arse. I think it's like if it's 60% civilian but 40% target, it's allowed. Like it still counts as a just war, dropping a bomb on them.
Yeah.
It still counts as like just not immoral. I mean, like when the majority are innocent.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go by their definition of immoral though.
That to me seems very immoral.
Hard
It-
Brexit, man.
to put a potential, to put an odds-based chance on murdering a completely innocent person.
Well, again, it's just the odds game. It could be that you actually haven't killed anyone guilty there.
Yeah.
I think
Do
it
you
depends.
agree with drone strikes at all? What do you think about
I
them?
mean, it all depends on the situation, but I
Mm.
don't think that someone, unless they have a good knowledge that what they're committing is an atrocity, or if the war is unjust, because a lot of people who go into war don't have much knowledge of whether the war is
I'm still
unjust
talking
or
about
not.
infantry, yeah.
Yeah, so
Mm.
they go into, oh, anyone, an RAF pilot dropping planes, most people
Dropping
in the
bombs.
war dropping planes, dropping bombs.
That's a waste.
Could drop a plane on someone, couldn't you?
Japanese did it. It was pretty
Yeah.
effective, though, wasn't it?
They done it very
Well,
well.
no, they lost, mate.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, but so if you don't have full knowledge, you're not really to blame. You're out there, you're
So-
committing acts of murder, but you're not morally unjust in doing so because I guess you've been tricked into thinking you're doing it
Propaganda, yeah.
on a good cause. So and it's difficult for someone who's like, for example, in wars like World War II, I don't think any people in the war were committing anything unjust. As far as they're concerned, there was a big evil army out there, and they had to be stopped.
The
And
small
if they-
guys.
and
The
if they-
small guys.
Yeah, and exactly the small guys. And if they didn't stop it, then as far as they were concerned, they would
Their
get
country
taken
would get
over
fucked.
and everything would be
Yeah.
ruined. I don't think they're to blame. The people who may be, but in other wars, I think the people who incite the wars, the people above it, and they do have knowledge that perhaps it's unjust, but they're doing it for money or resources or whatever. I think they're to blame, and I don't think that the people in the infantry are to blame. However, I do think if you gain knowledge of it, then you kind of
That's
like.
the time to stop.
Yeah, you're
Whoa.
like, well, what I'm doing maybe is wrong. This is an unjust war. By fighting here, I'm supporting it.
So you would
Well,
argue.
do they have an option to leave? Can they leave?
Yeah. So this is what I was talking about the other day with moral permissibility. So if you've got someone in this situation where they are out in a war and they discover that it's an unjust war and they're like, right, I've got to leave. They go through the process. You leave, but it takes 3 months. So you've got to stay out
so
for 3 months and fight.
not so long ago,
He's learned
desertion was
it's an
definitely-
unjust war, and he's still got to defend himself or whatever. So I
Right.
still say it's morally permissible to commit these acts, even though they are now morally bad acts because he knows what he's doing is unjust.
What does permissible mean?
I think morally permissible. We don't have this discussion now. I think morally permissible is when you are permitted to do an act with that has like some sort of immoral complication.
So you think it's okay
Yeah.
or good?
It makes the act okay, even though it's a morally unjust act.
So you think it's still morally bad, but it's okay to do?
Yeah, you're like morally permitted to do a morally
Right.
unjust act.
Because I disagree. I think permissible. I mean, I like the dictionary definition. Permissible is just not bad. It's okay and good. It's neutral and good, but it's just not bad. So
What would you say to that guy then, doing what's now probably a morally unjust act?
I have an extremely, I don't know, it's sort of like not well thought out. I think I've probably copped out a bit, in my opinion.
Don't fucking say that.
Like-
Everyone has just shut off what they're listening to.
A lot of our
I don't
ideas
really
aren't
know
very
what I'm
well
saying,
thought.
but here's some shit anyway.
No, but I think if you're an infantryman and you know what's going on, you realise if you ran away, you're a deserter, and not so long ago you get killed for it. I think it's morally bad for you to carry on. I also think it's morally bad for you to desert, because not only are you putting your life at, or practically you're certainly going to die if you leave, and you might not die if you stay, but you don't want to kill the people. So I think your duty to survive, your rights and your duty to yourself, neglecting those is evil, but I think carrying on and killing somebody else in a war is probably the greater evil. So I'm a big fan of the lesser of two evils. I'm a really big fan of that. I don't think, when it comes to morality, I think there's very few things that are permissible.
So you would say they're being morally unjust either way, and that you should just do the less morally unjust act?
I think in that situation, morally you should do the lesser of two evils. I can't say it's morally right thing to do, but I think you should do personally, just don't die. I mean, we've been over this 100 times. Like, I don't think you should.
I think there would be an argument to be made that if it came down to it, the correct option would be to die. If you were going to get court-martialed and shot, or you had to go out and go on to kill innocent people, I think potentially the correct moral option would be to accept your fate and to spare the lives of others.
Yeah, it's one life against.
If you're going to look at it holistically, like I don't know if that's the correct word. If you're going to look at it like that as a one-for-one comparison, but I don't know if we have a special obligation to protect our own lives morally over the lives of others, because one camp might say that nobody else is going to look after you, so in your eyes you should be your own priority. But also, if you want to look at it from a pure numbers perspective, a pure, utilitarian overall view, you're going to be suffering some harm to prevent a greater harm to however many people you're going to kill with the next bomb you drop. But I wanted to digress. So Tom, do you think that...
He's taking notes.
Yeah, I want to know what's going on, because you keep fucking talking over me, so I have to write down what I want to say, you dickhead.
Sorry.
So Tom, you were saying about how ignorance plays a part in whether or not their actions are just or unjust. Do you not think that... Well, first of all, do you think that, now I've phrased it like that, that's true, that simply being ignorant of the fact that something is immoral makes it, what you're doing, a moral act, until you realise that it is immoral?
You have to have intention.
You think so?
I think being ignorant of an act can excuse the immoral implications, only if so far as it's not very easy to attain the knowledge. So, like, let's say let's say World War II was an unjust war. Now it's a lot easier for us to attain knowledge on what's going on in the world politically and whether a war is unjust or not. Back then, you don't log into the internet or anything. You just kind of read what's in the paper. The paper says the Germans are coming, so you've got to defend yourselves. So in that case, I would say yes, they are excused, even if we were considered an unjust war and they were doing morally bad actions. I guess you could say the same about Nazis that grew up with like a Nazi doctrine and they were tricked into doing what they were doing. don't know whether I'd completely excuse it because you can. It's a difficult one. You can still not do it, but I mean,
That's
a difficult one.
You can look at it from various different perspectives. I mean, those soldiers, they could have sat down and thought about it, and really, if they for some reason decided maybe I should think a little bit harder about joining the army, they could then have sat down and come to the conclusion that the war was immoral, or they could have come down. They could have taken avenues in the past that would have led them to the conclusion sooner.
They possibly could have thought that way, but at the same time, if you're being kind of brainwashed, then the possibility of thinking that way seems almost zero.
So I mean,
and it's like the other people doing the brainwashing to blame.
Yeah.
Quite possibly more to blame than the people committing the acts. So I guess I'd put most of the blame on the people doing the brainwashing. I mean, can you be to blame for being brainwashed? I don't know.
Yeah.
So in after Nazi Germany, after they lost the war, a lot of, I'm not sure about officials, but I do know a lot of soldiers. They'd use I don't want to say excuse, the reason of we're doing what we're told.
Yeah.
You know, they're using that to excuse what they did because they're making the claim, whether or not it's true, that they had no choice. So you think that could have been valid? Is that what you're saying? You're saying they did what they were told.
Yeah.
Could have been, if it was truth.
Yeah,
if it was truth, could have been valid.
I think that although the reason that they give it doesn't excuse the behaviour, but it kind of excuses them being morally wrong. But I still think I still believe in consequences. It's the same where like with like murders or rapists or anything like that, even if they were always going to end up in that way, you still have to suffer the consequences. So like all these, say there's now these Nazis running around and they still have hatred towards Jews, and there's, I don't know, let's say that they were going to lock them all up, but they say, we can't because we were just following orders. It's like, well, if you still have this Nazi doctrine mindset and you're a danger to society, then you kind of got to suffer the consequences. Whether they're to blame or not, you still have to look at the bigger picture, and you still have to. Yeah, it's like, well, I get that you're following orders, but if you're a danger to the greater number of people, then you still have to suffer the consequences. I mean, maybe you can be sensible about it and evaluate them and put them away for a bit. And
so you think
assess them.
You think to an extent, ignorance or just following orders, to an extent, was a good excuse. Do you think that's, obviously with technology and everything, do you think that's still an excuse?
Difficult. So we take a war like what's going on in the Middle East at the moment? I mean, would you say it's an unjust war?
I don't think we should be in that.
I think as far as I'm concerned, terrorism increased because we got involved.
Let's assume it's an unjust war, just for the sake of argument.
Okay, so if we assume it's an unjust war, well, it actually works better if we say that we don't know, because it's more realistic. So yes, you can look up the details, but it's not clear that it's an unjust war. It's not really, really clear. Like, there's evidence to maybe say it's unjust, but it's not completely clear. So although you have the availability to come to this decision that it's an unjust war, and it's more likely, there could be many people in the army that look up details and think, this is a just war, I'm going to join. Even if it's then decided it's an unjust war, they've kind of gone through the actions of looking it up and deciding that's a just war, and then they also their moral intentions have to be good.
Yeah.
Because if they're going out there to just kill people because they like killing people, then they're not suddenly morally excused for their actions.
Yeah, we know someone who was in the army, and he said most of the people, a few stragglers get through, but practically everyone who has that kind of mindset don't get accepted into the army or the armed forces.
No, I'd hope not.
Yeah, so it's very difficult, but yeah, in a way, if your intentions are good, then, and even if you're then competing in an unjust war, you've gone in it with good moral intentions, and it's an unjust war. I guess the people who made the war a thing in the first place are really to blame. You're not to blame for being out there.
I think we all agree on that. Like, people starting the ruckus are responsible. Yeah, the most, if not all.
So, I mean, we've been discussing this. We've been using this term quite a few times. This idea of a just war.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if we wanted to elaborate on what we think a just war is, and when
Yeah,
a war
I
is,
think-
if a war even can be justified.
I think we might disagree on what that means.
Okay, well let's go around, and we'll see what we think. So what do you think, Tom?
I need to think on it. Can someone else go?
Well, I like the UN's definition of a just
Okay.
war. Basically, a just war, to my knowledge, I could be completely fucking wrong, but a just war is when both sides have the equal firepower. That's it. I don't like that because I think, well, surely one side has to be right. You know, like for instance, that gives you an excuse to, I don't know, obviously arm rebels, but those rebels could be wrong. You know, and you know we have an obligation because of the UN to assist them, even if we do think they're wrong, and we are obviously there's plenty of examples. 20 years time, when the rebels win, they turn on someone else, and that someone else can be us, or I guess the Western community. So I think a just war is just arming both sides with equal amount of firepower, which I disagree. I don't think you should do that. What do you think, Thomas?
I think a just war depends on whether it's somehow morally right to have a war, which I think nowadays would mean that there is almost no such thing as a just war. Like,
Yeah.
could the war be avoided? Probably.
Morally, so you're saying morally justified, yeah?
Yeah. So I mean, maybe the world wars were just wars. It kind of seems like there was an evil doctrine looking to push very evil things.
To be fair, if we didn't get
I-
involved, we're going to get fucked.
I think that was a just war, but I mean,
Well, that was before the UN, the
Yeah.
United Nations. I can't remember the institute that was before, but I can't remember their name. But I don't believe they had a system for a just war, or their own definition anyway.
Yeah.
it's difficult because I mean, if there could have been a way to not have had a war,
Yeah.
then it kind of makes it unjust, doesn't it? It's
You're
like,
saying
oh,
we should avoid it.
yeah, it's very difficult to call war just, and I don't like doing it. But as far as my knowledge goes, it was a just war. But I mean, if there was a situation where it could have been stopped, but they kind of let it happen
Yeah.
due to all the money they could have made or something, it then becomes an unjust war.
Yes.
Mm.
Well, I mean, like it's extremely easy to use foresight and evaluate was that justified or not?
Mm.
Was that morally permissible? But I mean, I think when when looking towards a war or looking at a war that's actually happening right now, I think it's very difficult to justify
I don't think
what
you
the
can be.
intentions are. I guess.
I don't think you can be just in starting a war.
Yeah.
I guess. Like, I mean, maybe there's atrocities going on in a country, and you can be just in saving the people.
I think Libya is probably an easy example of that.
But
back
then
in the
I guess
80s.
the people are unjust in their own country.
So I would be quite compelled to argue that the only way to be in a just position in a war is to be in a position of defence.
Yeah, I like that.
It's difficult to
Yeah.
find an example in which starting a war would be the only and justified option to take.
So what about in like World War II? If we find out now in Germany they've rounded up all the Jews and started killing them, are we just in going to war then?
I think that is defending. I think that's defending people who can't defend
Yeah.
It's not
themselves.
defending yourself though, are you? You're still going to war with another country.
Well, that's another question. Are we morally obliged to help other people, and are we morally obliged to help other people from different countries? I mean, yeah, for instance, Nazi Germany versus the Jews, versus the Polish, versus the French and the Belgians, or today's probably an easy example, probably a more controversial example, is do we have an obligation, a moral obligation, to help refugees?
Yeah.
So obviously when we talk about morality, we usually talk about society. But then do we differentiate societies? Do we say these refugees are from a different society, so we don't have a moral obligation, or what?
I'm a big fan of just helping the humans as a race. Anything that progresses us as a race.
Until
I
they
think we should
lose
do.
their rights for your assistance, until they do something negative.
Yeah, but then they're not helping to progress the human race, I guess.
Well, what would you say? What would you say would be something negative? Because obviously, I can't remember where I read this. It was in a tutorial the other day. People who we have a moral obligation to help people in a society, and in a society, other people have a moral obligation to help us, to an extent. But the second you go against society, the second you go against the social contract with other people, you can be excluded from the society, or you can be excluded from being assisted by society. So if people have a different society to us, we can assume that they might have a different social contract. So can we blame them for breaking our social contract, and should we use that as an excuse not to help them?
What do you think, Matthew?
Wow.
Oh, I wasn't listening.
Oh, my heart, man.
So it's difficult. I guess when you're going to a country and you're going to a society, you kind of abide by the rules.
What happens if they're running away from a war? What happens if they're
That.
running to save their lives?
What's the context?
A refugee,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
they're usually running away from something,
Yeah.
prosecution or a war or something. And so if they come here, I mean, there's lots of cases
Yeah.
of them breaking the law and either not realising or just having no idea what they've done wrong.
So they need some form of rehabilitation.
Education.
Yeah. They need to learn how to live in society, but they should abide by. I guess they should abide by societal rules unless
If
it's
they want our
stupid rules,
assistance.
but yeah.
So do we have an obligation, moral obligation, to help other countries then?
I think yes. I think we should be doing everything we can to literally help the human race on a whole. So we should be helping the poor Africans and sending them money and trying to advance their civilization and every other civilization around us.
But that's a very difficult one, because when it comes to dealing with other cultures and other countries, we apply our cultural code of ethics onto them. Like our place in the Middle East and India as well. But once we took over India, we imposed our own culture onto them and made them want the things we want.
Is that morally okay?
Is that morally okay? And secondly, if you have cultures such as, I don't know, some places in the Middle East where things are very, like they have got low women's rights, or I don't know, they kill their gays or something like that. At which point is it okay for us to say, your culture is wrong, ours is right, and you now need to follow our culture, otherwise we're going to militarily intervene?
Yeah, I guess that's why we have like what we consider to be moral rights. Although we are imposing a doctrine, we believe we're doing right by imposing a doctrine, don't we? I think we can quite easily decide what actions help humans on a whole and what actions aren't helping us on a whole. Killing gays probably doesn't help our civilization on a whole.
Well, what about something slightly less black and white, like a communist state, for example?
The dictatorship.
Or a benevolent dictatorship.
In our country, is very accepted. Oh yeah, democracy. Democracy is amazing. We automatically assume that. For instance, I'm William. I personally do not agree with democracy. I think we should have a dictator. I think we should go straight up Roman on this. We should have a council. We should have a dictator who says yes or no to the council. And lots of people are completely offended. They're like personally offended when I say that. Like, no, that's disgusting. Democracy is amazing. Is democracy amazing? I mean, do we have the right to say that? We just accept it as it is. We don't think critically about it.
I think people get sick with that much power.
Yeah?
I don't think...
We do have examples where they don't.
I think we have plenty of examples when they do, though.
That's fair, yeah.
So that's a difficult one. But so you've got a country that it's on some weird middle ground where they're not really breaking any moral rules, that we would say, but they're not being very progressive. I don't know, maybe they... Then if they say you got a communist country, it's failing miserably and everyone's going hungry.
North Korea.
Should we send them food? That's probably not.
Or should we
That's probably
overthrow
not
the
the
regime?
answer to their solution, is it? Should we overthrow the regime? That's probably not an answer to the solution either.
I think it is.
Should we offer a better solution? So you can offer a better solution to the citizens and say, right, do you guys want this on a whole?
Us or them?
If yes, we'll help you out. If the citizens are voting for this regime, then the only thing you can do
now
is...
you've imposed democracy on it again, because you've assumed that they have to vote for something for it to be legitimate.
And to be fair, they might not say yes, even if it's in their best interest. I mean, Nazi Germany, just before the war, they wouldn't say yes to us. They go, no, screw you, Hitler's better.
Of course not, and that's why then you just need to. That's where education comes in. So you'd hope now most countries around the world have access to the internet, so you can give them.
The internet can be restricted.
Yeah, definitely, and then that poses other problems.
That's
But
exactly what
you
the
can
communists
help.
do right now.
Yeah, exactly. And there would be a way of elevating them would be giving them access to other materials.
But is that
So-
morally okay to do that?
Yeah, well, surely it's morally wrong for them to have their access taken away. Whether it's then morally right for us to go and intervene and just blow them all up and take over is difficult because it becomes of so many moral implications. Like how many people are going to die when we do it?
But should we have a right to internet? I mean, the UN and most people agree we should have a right to democracy. But a communist country or a dictatorship wouldn't say that. Say, no, you don't have a right to vote. Why would you have a right to vote?
Yeah, I think we should have a right to do most things. as
But
long as
now
we're
you're
not harming
pushing-
other people.
Now you're pushing your agenda onto a different society.
If it's progressive for the human race.
Can you be
And
the
as long as you're
person?
not harming other people.
Can you be the person to make that choice though? Do you want to be the?
I mean,
Do you want to be the
I mean,
dictator?
that's where it's difficult. I mean, you can also just do nothing. You know.
But I mean that's like the trolley example, innit? Doing nothing doesn't mean you're morally permissible.
I've heard quite a convincing argument for the trolley problem that the best moral action to take is to walk away from the situation and not get involved.
Really?
Yeah, it is compelling because I don't know if you're obliged to intervene to save people from something that's inevitably going to happen.
Right.
But if you do,
So let's elaborate on the trolley problem.
okay, yeah. So this is a really popular problem. So you're in like a train trolley. It's kind of like a tram. I think it's what they call them in America, like
Yeah.
trolleys. And it's whizzing along, and there are 5 people on the track in front of you, and you just happen to be there. You're not the driver or anything like that. And it's going to run them over and kill them, basically. But you have the option of diverting onto a different track, where there is another person, just one though, and choosing to murder them instead of the 5. And depending on how, it's a very difficult one because there's a lot of different ways you can look at it. It really forces you to examine your moral framework,
Ethical
I
code.
suppose. Yeah. How did that come up again? I lost my train.
The trolley
Lost
problem.
my trolley.
Oh, I don't know. Will brought it up with some moral.
Yeah, well,
implications.
we were saying, can you ever be morally okay
Oh,
to
I
just
see.
not do anything?
Yeah.
Yeah, and perhaps in that situation you are.
Can you elaborate on that? Why do you think that?
Well, I mean, why it's definitely a morally evil thing to do to murder that one person. You have created a situation in which they wouldn't have died otherwise, and you've chosen to kill them. To leave it on the track, to walk away from the situation, you haven't put those 5 people on that railway. You haven't.
So you aren't responsible.
You aren't responsible for these people. It might be a supererogatory or whatever the fuck that word was, like higher than, not obliged, but like a super good thing to do.
I think laudable is a really good way to say it. Basically, you'd be praised for it. You're a hero.
I mean, I don't know. It's difficult to say that it would be a praiseworthy act to switch it over to the one man.
Yeah, I think
It's
so.
very difficult because I don't know if you can weigh people up against each other in terms of numbers. I think it's as clear cut as one person is less valuable than 5 people. I think everyone is individually priceless. So it's very difficult to just do it as a numbers game. But what you can look at is is your actions, your implication, and what you caused to happen. And maybe just letting the cards fall as they were going to fall anyway is the only way you can not have to murder anybody.
I couldn't imagine that. I can't imagine that being okay. Like, I wouldn't say I'm a utilitarian, but in this situation, I would take the utilitarian view. And it doesn't matter if you're responsible or not. You have one choice: do nothing, 5 people die, or do something, 1 person dies. A utilitarian would kill the 1 person.
Yeah.
And I can't help but agree. I couldn't imagine letting the 5 people die. I feel still responsible because it's a very easy thing to do to switch the lever.
Yeah.
If I had to jump in front of the train, I'd let the 5 people die. You know, if I had to jump in front of it to move it and hit the 1 person, I think that's a massive sacrifice. I think that would be a heroic move.
So you think a key part of it is how easy it is to to just move it over.
Definitely. Moral
do you think that
obligations.
scales? Do you think that would scale with the amount of people you save?
Well, that's it. It gets very difficult then, doesn't it?
If it gets harder, the action, but you save more people.
Yeah, you have to pinpoint. Well, how much is this worth? How much sacrifice do you actually need to make?
Yeah, that's a very difficult one.
It's very difficult.
But I was just thinking of the line of argument that if you do take it like that, if you take it, there's a direct correlation between the amount of effort you're obliged to put in and the amount of life you're going to save. What us being philosophers and not training to be medical doctors and to potentially save thousands of people in our lives then becomes a morally bad act. Everyone is acting immorally by not saving lives every single
I think
day.
it's down to how easy you can do it. It's like the one where you can save someone's life by putting your cool hand on their head.
Yeah.
I think if you're in the room, you should do it.
I think a child drowning in a shallow pool is a lot better.
And you're right there.
You can just you get your feet wet, but you save someone's life.
Yeah.
Or you do nothing.
Whereas if it's a angry shark infested lake.
If it's a pond with long weeds in the bottom, you could get tangled up just as much as a child.
Yeah.
Even then, I think you should risk it.
But I mean, even in the trolley situation, I don't know if that's as easy as it seems. It's not just the act of pulling a lever; it's the act of murdering somebody. That's what you have now got to do.
I think what would happen in the situation mostly is people would be like, "Fuck what I do, fuck what I do, fuck what I do."
Yeah,
and 5
definitely.
people would just get run over, and nobody would be
Yeah.
on the lever.
Yeah.
You just panic and kill them anyway. I do think you have to be held responsible for that. I do think because it's so easy to make the choice. I think it's literally down to do I kill one person or 5 people? Without blinking, I'd kill the one person.
I think I'm very skeptical as well of the idea that our morality can force us to have to do certain acts. I kind of view morality as a preventative thing.
Yeah.
Here are these things you can't do. You can't harm other people. You can't infringe on their freedoms, X, Y, and Z. I get very uncomfortable with the concept that to be a moral person there are certain things you have to do.
Yeah.
And not it's impossible to remain in sort of a state of neutrality.
Well, that specifically has a name, doesn't it?
I'm not sure.
I can't remember what it is, but I mean, for instance, one example of that is a government illegalization of drugs. It's like, well, do you have the right to stop people doing something? For instance, don't do drugs; it's bad for you. And do you have the right to make them do something like wear a seatbelt?
Yeah.
Does a government have a right? Does a society have a right to do that? Is it morally okay to force someone to do something rather than stopping them from doing something?
That's what I really struggle is it being morally okay forcing someone to do something.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I'm very much on Mill's side with this. With the you basically shouldn't ever be able to infringe on a person's freedom unless their actions are going to infringe on the freedoms of other people. That's probably a very basic view, and I bet there's loads of philosophers out there who would love to point out to me why I'm fucking stupid.
Yeah,
for
maybe.
believing that.
I have no idea which is right. I genuinely, I'm a fan of paternalism, but I'm a fan of going both ways. You know, stopping them from doing something and forcing them to do something. But I'm also a fan of abolishing that as well.
So
it's hard.
why do you think that? Why do you think it is sometimes appropriate to act against other people's will just because of what you think is better for them?
Well, firstly, because I want to be the dictator of the world. So,
good argument, mate.
But secondly, I think it's even if it's themselves, I think it can be in their best interest. I mean, easy example: if someone wants to kill themselves, I consider that thought alone a mental illness.
Okay,
so
well that's
take
not
that
what we're
choice.
Discussing though. We're talking about. We probably should have disclaimed it. When we're talking about these kind of freedoms, it's applicable in this case anyway of adults who are in control of all their faculties are making fully logical, rational, decisions. Because I agree that in certain cases where people don't necessarily have that, like children or the severely mentally ill or things like that, there are better grounds to enforce paternalism on these kinds of people. But in terms of a completely rational adult, who I think should be in complete control to pursue what he believes is his best life.
Right, so yeah, a better example then for my reasoning would be if somebody wants to leave society. We don't know whether or not they'll have a positive or a negative contribution, but I would agree they have a duty to society as society has a duty to them. So in this situation, I think they should not be allowed to leave society. You should force them, stop them from leaving society. But I also think screw that. Why not let them leave?
Yeah.
I think
I don't think
them
it's
leaving won't have a
Yeah.
negative or a positive contribution to society. It's just them leaving. It's neutral.
Yeah.
Like I said, I also think you should force them to stay because they could have a positive or they could have a negative later on.
I very strongly disagree with the concept that you should be able to force people to stay in your
Yeah, I struggle with
society.
that one.
You may as well have slaves at that point, bound into this contract and they can never leave. That's a fucking
But I mean,
it's a nightmare future.
do we have a duty because of
For
our social
William.
contract? Do we have a duty? And should we have a duty? Should we be able to leave? Explain to me why we shouldn't be able to leave.
I think the only duty we have when we reap the benefits of our society is to pay our taxes. I think that is our full
And not
total
harm
contribution.
anyone else.
Yeah, but I don't think that's to do with the social contract. I think that's
Yeah.
to do with our morality.
Yeah. I think you should step in back to paternalism only if someone is clearly of an unsound mind.
Mm.
So if you just suddenly started slitting your wrists in this room, I should step in and stop you
Mm.
doing it.
Because the assumption
clearly
is
some
that-
screws.
If you think they may change their mind, you should stop them from doing it.
Yeah, if they I mean, maybe if you handed me a 10,000 word essay on why you're going to slit your wrists, I could be like, well, if it was well
It's been
thought
thought
out, if it was
out,
well
yeah.
thought out, maybe I'd let you do it. I probably still wouldn't. But yeah, but would you have free will in slitting your wrists?
Oh, we need to. One of the things we need to do definitely is to find a slightly more regimented way of covering these. I think like a little.
I think this
between
flow was
each other.
really good, man.
Well, I'm worried that it's going to become a little bit quite easy to tune out if like you stop listening for like 3 seconds and all of a sudden we've somehow moved entirely to a different.
Yeah, I think that's just a matter of us getting better at talking and covering topics. I think
Yeah.
for first, if I'm going well.
So
But
bear
let's-
with us, guys.
let's,
Anyway, so on
let's
to
do
our
free
next
will.
our next topic. We
Free
wanted to
will.
talk about free
Yeah.
will for a
I
little
mean,
bit.
did you ever have free will when you pulled the lever to save the one guy's life, or was
What-
that decision to pull the lever?
What do we define as free will?
This is a big problem.
Well, I think that's going to get us down a road we don't want to go down. I think we should define what makes it a deterministic universe, because this is what seems likely. So, in the example when you're pulling the lever of the trolley problem, was it all your environmental factors in your life up to this situation that led you to the decision to pull the lever? Most likely, yes. If you ran that lever scenario 50 times,
Yeah.
was you ever going to make a different decision than you did?
I think an easy way of explaining that
Probably
would be
not.
the parallel universes. Two universes are exactly the same in every single way possible.
Mm.
There's no differences. Now we have a little boy called George. He wants to join the Scouts. In universe A, he does join the Scouts. In universe alternate A, I can't call it B because that'd be different. In alternate A,
A2
does he join the Scouts?
Yes.
in every single thing.
Because the deterministic view would be yes, he would join it. Everything else is exactly the same.
Mm.
So he actually does not have free will in the situation. He was going to join it because the reasons why he joined it is the same in both universes, and the reasons for them and the reasons for them, and everything is the same. So everything would carry on being the same. So we can't have that's a parallel universe. So we can't have alternate universes, because in an alternate universe we assume something could be random. So now, do we believe in randomness?
That's the big question.
Because
I
in
mean,
determinism,
can
we can't
randomness
have it.
then prove some sort of possibility of free will? Because at the moment everything seems determined. You're born, and then every single environmental factor around you shapes you and your decisions, and all your
Yeah.
environmental factors around you are shaped by everyone else's environmental factors in the world, which are already determined from there. It's just a big determined circle of determinism. But I think there's an example of randomness in electrons, in the way an electron flies around an atom. Obviously, we don't have very good scientific knowledge on this. But it disappears and then it reappears elsewhere, or we see it has energy in one place and then we see it suddenly has energy in another place.
Yeah, but we don't know why or how yet. That's a problem.
Well, we maybe do. We maybe think that it disappears. I mean, I think a scientist could probably better explain it, but I think the consensus is at the moment is that this is an example of randomness, and we can run it on randomness. You brought up the point where it's possible that it could just be it's doing something that we can't measure, and then it's reappearing in a form that we can
Well,
measure.
what I think what's happening is I imagine sort of in this situation I think it's easier to imagine energy, And so we can't detect this energy by itself. But when it clumps together, we can detect this energy. And this clump we call an electron. But then it dissipates again,
Yeah.
and we can't see it. But in that same instant, it collects in some sort of like waves. It collects in somewhere else, and we can detect it. That's what I think's happening.
I don't think that's right, because I think we would pick up on the energy of the dissipation. We'd pick up on it going from 0.31 to the power of 30 or whatever it is, down to a little bit less. I think we can pick up on it. But if we run on an electron being an example of randomness,
If it is randomness, yeah.
does that still, can we leave that in any way to crack in the free will problem? Does that give us free will? And I think it's very difficult. I don't really know how an electron builds the universe around us, but I think an electron's randomness could maybe have a small influence on the way the environment around us has been built up, in so much as it could affect very slightly how something is reacting with something else, how bonds are formed, and then in some cases the bonds are formed because the electron's energy is stronger on one side of the atom than it is on the other, and then it forms a covalent bond with another electron whose energy is also on the same side.
So if we follow this logic, this leads to the possibility of randomness.
Yes.
Now, with the possibility of randomness, this leads to the possibility of infinite universes with an infinite amount. I use infinite loosely here.
Yeah.
Infinite amount of situations that occur differently, because randomness can exist, because this domino effect made this difference. Does this mean the human brain will be affected by the randomness, or the human brain would still be deterministic because it's affected by a difference in environment?
Well, I mean, this is why I think it would have been a really good idea for us to try and define what we mean by free will, because
hey man, I asked.
I know. But I mean, just a quick shot to try and sum it up in a sentence. I kind of see it as the ability to make a choice based on your environment. Would you say that's a fair?
I would say that's a layman's term of free will, but I would better define that as freedom. You have the freedom to choose what you want to do. I think that free will would be better defined as you can do whatever you want without any factors. There's no factors influencing your decision. For instance, if I had a gun to your head and I said, throw that against the wall, that would be an influencing factor. And I think determinism would be just an accumulative amount of influencing factors. So I don't think we don't actually make a decision at all, because that was going to happen.
But I mean, this is my point. I was trying to get to this point in that we can maybe still have free will, but if the decisions we make through that free will are dependent on the things around us.
Soft determinism. So you can have like a hard determinism, where everything is our actions completely determined by our environment, or soft determinism where our environment sort of influences our actions.
Yeah.
The example I said the other day is that there's a possibility of doing action A to Z. The environment around us has dictated the possibility of doing action A to D. Free will is being able to choose action A to D. If we don't have free will, we would always choose action A.
I'd say that's freedom.
Yeah. Well,
can I just get you to differentiate between your concepts of freedom and free will, please?
So yes, freedom is there is nothing oppressing you or forcing you into doing it. For instance, slavery, you have no freedom there. This is more of a natural world or a man-made world influencing your decision. Free will would be the ability to make a choice without any influence whatsoever. So this includes the natural world as well as the rest of the universe, I guess.
But I mean, how can you ever make a decision without being influenced by anything? You make a decision.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
You make a decision based on taking in what it is you need to do, the things around you, potential outcomes, projected success based on past experiences.
Yeah, based on your genes and your environment growing up.
Yeah.
So I mean, free will is impossible.
I'm saying free will is impossible. However, if we do have randomness in an electron, this proves randomness is possible. And again, another assumption: if the randomness affects the brain, this could lead to free will. But I still don't like that
I
idea.
don't think it'd lead to free will. I think it would just lead to randomness in the brain. So if
Exactly.
if an electron,
You aren't actually making the choice.
Yeah,
So I'm saying free will is just impossible.
I disagree, but I don't want to stay on this for too long because we spoke about it in Tesco's for ages. And
Yes.
we never got anywhere.
You guys chat amongst yourselves for 3 seconds. I'm going to go pee. Do you want me to pause it for a second? Or just want to
No. We'll carry on.
We'll carry on.
spitball some questions?
We don't
for you
need you
guys?
here. We don't
Well,
need you here.
so my understanding is back to free will. If you travel around the world at the speed of light or faster than the speed of the light, time stops. And-
Time
and you can-
slows down the closer you get to the speed of light. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure.
That's why it's
I'm
impossible
sure-
to go past it because
I'm
time
pretty
literally
sure,
stops.
I'm pretty sure it stops, and then you can view time from that point forward and backwards.
Well, you can't because you're included in time. You also stop.
See, this is what.
That's
this
why
is,
it's
this,
literally
this is something I
impossible.
read online. Well, obviously
It's
I read
a
it online,
paradox, mate.
so but you apparently you can see time, and time's a fourth dimension. So theoretically, can we not travel along the fourth dimension?
I do not think so. Because, from my knowledge, I mean, my knowledge is like 7 or 8, maybe longer years old. I remember watching Through the Wormhole. I can't remember, it was Stephen Hawkins or it was Morgan Freeman hosting, but it was Through the Wormhole. And he proposed a thought experiment. So let's imagine we have a train, we have a bullet train that goes around the world in a single loop. Now it goes around and around and around and around. It gets quicker and quicker and quicker. And the quicker the train goes, the slower the people inside are actually moving.
Yeah.
Because the faster you go, the closer you get to the speed of light, which means you actually slow down. You to the outside world, I obviously don't understand it completely, but to the outside world you're going extremely quick. But you yourself don't hold to that logic. You are going as slow as your brain could process, I guess.
People back on Earth would, for example, age 10 years after 10 years.
Well, that's another example,
and the
yeah.
people on the train would only
If
age
you're-
maybe 5 years.
If you're around, because gravity has a really interesting effect on time. So if you're around a black hole, if you are orbiting a black hole for 10 years and you come back to Earth, turns out 100 years has passed on Earth.
Yeah, you
'Cause
still
gravity
only
affects
age
it.
10 years as
Because
well.
gravity affects the... it's obviously we don't really know what we're talking about. This is science right now rather
Yeah.
than philosophy. But as far as I understand, as far as I can assume, I don't really understand it. Gravity has an effect on light, and light determines time, I guess. For instance, yeah, you came
What a
back.
sentence to walk in on. So,
Yeah.
is that science or just a guess?
So,
Who knows?
Definitely, I guess.
A really easy example as well is when you stand, and this is actually observable, apparently. I haven't tested it myself, I remember watching a documentary. Could be false, it was a long time ago. But when you stand next to the Pyramid of Giza, you lean against it. You lean against the Pyramid of Giza and you look outside.
Yeah.
That car over there is going 60 miles an hour. But when you look at it, it's only going 40.
I don't think it's quite at that scale, but I think there's a very, very, very minute scale in where the pyramid's so big that it has its own.
This gravitational
Yeah.
pull distorts
Yeah.
the light, which distorts time, so time and light must be correlated. I mean, it could be correlation rather than causation,
Well,
but I assume
We
they
don't have a
both
clue.
go hand in hand with each other.
the point I was going to get at is I read
Sorry, yeah.
something about the speed of light. If you go at the speed of light, or if you go extremely fast, time stops, and you can actually view time on like a timeline.
I'm not sure if you could view it.
Or if there's a fourth dimension, you can travel it. Then that would instantly imply that the world is deterministic. Because if you can view forward in time, then you have to be able to view a deterministic.
So,
world.
like, yeah, if God knows everything, then there is no such thing as free will.
Yeah, kind of. But,
So everything's already, you already know what's going to happen.
yeah. Here's something I came up with, my tinfoil hat one. that
Hey.
says that
Oh,
it's,
exciting. So, Tom is a flat earther and a climate change denier. What else? What other crazy shit do you believe, Tom?
faked all the moon landings, didn't
Yeah,
they?
the moon landings aren't real.
9/11 was done by elves.
Basically, Thomas has a very
Yeah.
open mind, and
Too open.
we don't condone tinfoil hats. because I think that's a very ignorant way to look at the world.
Not actually
Use
a tinfoil hat.
Well, no, but
Right.
it's a nice way to
Not
address
far
your
off, though,
opinion.
mate, not far
So
off.
let's hear your
nowhere near a
tinfoil hat opinion,
Right.
mate.
So, could it be possible that you can transcend determinism, and then you have the ability to act on free will? So it could be that there's a very large amount of humans that are living a deterministic life, but is it possible that through like a form of enlightenment that you can transcend determinism and gain access to being able to have free will?
Do you know what? Actually, I don't think it is possible. However, if we could approach the speed of light, and if we reach the speed of light, and these are all assumptions.
Going off on a bit of a tangent.
This is relevant.
Let's see where it gets.
If we go up to the speed of light, because obviously there's different speeds of light. But if we get to the fastest speed of light, and time stops, and we can see all the time, and we can see everything that has happened, that is happening, that is going to happen, sort of like living outside of time,
Could have an effect.
then I believe that yes, if we know exactly what's going to happen, we can deliberately make a different decision and watch the future change. We have to have knowledge of everything that is going to happen. And I think the only beings that could possibly have free will in the more defined sense would be beings that can see all of time and everything in time, because they can literally change time and influence it.
Maybe you can see the timeline through deep meditation. You know? What if you have a...
That's a tinfoil hat, mate.
Yeah, what if you have a dream of something that happens in the future?
Do you know what you should do? You should write a book, and your book should be the Hattie thesis.
I don't have hat thesis. I think this could genuinely have some sort of grounds to it. I think it could definitely be possible that you can reach a sort of transcended state, or even just a highly intellectual state, where all of a sudden you can break away from the determinism of your mind, and or even if you just get to the point where you can recognize what's deterministic and then somehow break away from that. I mean, I think it's plausible that it's possible that some people could unlock the ability for free will, but not everyone's going to be able to do that. And I kind of think it makes sense in so much as free will is such a difficult thing to explain, and it's such a difficult...
Yeah.
It's so difficult to argue away from determinism. Determinism just seems so strong. And maybe it's because it is so strong in so fact that free will is limited to the very few.
I think, actually, I think you might... See, obviously I don't agree with you, but I don't want to shun your opinion there, because...
It's just a thought bubble.
Human
it's not an
beings,
opinion.
obviously, we have chemicals in the brain, and these chemicals in the brain can slow down the thought process when processing what's going around us. So you can translate that into slowing down time, perceiving time at a slower rate. So if we manage to do that, which I solidly do believe that is probably possible through meditation. You meditate, you release these chemicals and there's a certain reaction. If that is possible, I assume it might be. You slow down time. So I sort of agree with you on that. I believe actually we probably can slow down time. Might be wrong, but we probably can slow down time, or our perception of time. And
I don't think we can slow down time.
I also believe people can dream the future. Because yeah. No, but I mean, I've experienced this, and I think most people, I think practically everyone's experienced this. You're a child, you dream, and then your dream comes true.
I haven't experienced it.
You've never experienced that?
I don't think anybody has.
I've dreamt of university, mate. Loads, all my family members have. Loads of people, when I was younger, talking to them, they've all experienced the same thing.
Let's have a little hiatus here, and now
What's going on? Is it
the
is it
computer
breaking
is
down?
scheduled to shut down in 8 minutes.
It's just as if you do nothing, just hit
Yeah.
cancel and then it'll go on.
Sorry.
Alright.
I mean, so that was an effective way to get Will off of whatever the fuck he was talking
No,
about.
I genuinely believe we can dream of the future.
I mean, if we can quickly get back to what you were talking about.
Yes,
Tom.
so do you think you can transcend determinism and unlock the ability to act freely?
So I was thinking about this. I mean, the way we think and the way we make decisions is based on our opinions and based on our internal biases, our opinions,
Environmental factors.
But I think our opinions and biases come as a result of two things. Firstly, our real world experience, and then what is innate within us. So the old nature-nurture conundrum. Now, if you were going to try and change the way you process information or the way you make decisions based on what, you would have to be moving towards some sort of goal. Say, I want to be less X or I want to be more Y. But then that moves back to your opinions. So you're going to have an opinion on what it is you want to be changing towards.
Yeah.
Which loops back around to being an opinion or a bias, which is a result of your either innate nature or the effects of your environment. So even if you were able to ascend in some sense the way your brain works in a certain direction, the direction you've chosen is a result of your environment and your nature.
Yeah, maybe, unless you've got a little circle there.
Yeah.
Which I assume relates to it. And I guess ascending would be completely ascending out of that thought circle in so much where it doesn't have an impact on you anymore.
I mean, if you could...
I think it would though, because it's still, your environment and your genes, like you're saying, you're programmed. Our brains are programmed because of our environment, because of our genes, or one or the other, whatever your opinion is. So I think actually, yeah, he's right. Actually, it would be impossible, because if you do escape all of time, and if you are this ultimate being living outside of existence, you know everything that's happened, is happening, going to happen. That doesn't change the way your brain has been programmed by your
still
environment and
reacting
genes.
to your environment.
So actually, yeah, I think he's right. Like,
fair
enough, man.
The only way I think you could break out of that is through some sort of madness or some sort of chaos.
We want an outro.
Are you incapable of recording any more at the end? I think there might be a time cap of about 1 hour something.
It's going now, isn't it?
Oh, is it going? It's just really tiny.
Okay, so we cut out for a bit.
We cut out like half an hour.
I don't think we cut out that long. The last point you raised was...
Oh, okay, yeah, we're recording again.
The last point you raised was here.
Oh yeah, so I just discussed about the circular nature of trying to fix your own thinking process. Because if you're going to move towards... If you're going to choose a point to move towards to improve yourself, the reasons for you wanting to move in that direction are all reliant on X, Y, and Z.
Well, you can't transcend determinism.
Yeah, we were trying to find a way to transcend determinism. But then I raised the point of, are we capable of original thought? So all of the eureka moments we've had throughout time, all of the inventions, X, Y, and Z, do we not think there is there's some originality to it? There's some aspect in perhaps the way that individual person took on the environment around them and perceived it in a certain way that would have been original to them.
It seems not. I mean, you're original in so much as you're a product of your environment.
And your environment is not going to be like anybody else's.
Yeah. So in that regard, it's a unique thought in so much as no one else is going to have that thought unless someone else have the exact same environmental influences as you, which they're not going to have. But it's still a determined thought.
Yeah.
Because the reason, like, if it comes down to, for me, if you replay that thought 1,000,000 times over, or replay the moment before that thought, are you always going to lead on to that thought? And always. 1,000,000 times over, you're always going to lead on to that thought.
I think so.
So who here believes in hard determinism then? Because I do.
I'm tempted to be. I'm not sure.
It's hard to argue against.
I'm definitely a soft determinist.
Yeah, I think there's the possibility of free will in a soft deterministic world. I just haven't thought how it's possible yet.
I don't think that's true, I don't know why.
I don't think it's true either.
But I think I'm a soft determinist if we can find random in the universe, in the sense that you were talking about earlier with the electrons and things.
Yeah.
If it's impossible to find a source of randomness in nature, then, or within ourselves, then I think it has to be hard determinism, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, even if we have randomness, it doesn't mean that there's free will. It just means there's, the possibility of it.
Yeah, no, that's why I say it would still be a soft deterministic. It would just mean that not everything in the universe is predetermined. It's just that everything around us is predetermined, and we react to what is around us, and therefore we're always going to behave the same anyway. It's just whether or not
I agree.
there's the possibility of something different or not.
I think having randomness boosts the chances of there being free will.
I don't think it does at all, because I think if we have randomness, we have one of or two. We have two.
We think free will is impossible anyway.
I think free will is impossible. But if randomness is true, then we have two possibilities from this. One possibility is random things can happen. However, this still causes a domino effect, and human beings will only think deterministically. So everything that happens is still determined because that randomness would be determined, I guess.
Or we could act randomly.
The second choice is we can act randomly, but then we don't have free will at all. We're acting randomly, we don't have control, so we can't have free will in that situation either.
Everything is possible. It
So I just
sucks,
think
doesn't
it's
it?
just impossible.
It's such a dick of a conversation to have, because you really want to say you have free will.
Yeah.
And when you open the conversation up, it really leans towards determinism. But I kind of like it because I like not liking determinism because it really gives me an angle to try and pick holes.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I
Gives you
really
motivation.
want to find free will. But maybe we can transcend free will. I mean, determinism. That's what.
But I mean, like, even if let's assume that you can transcend, you can gain the ability of free will.
Yeah.
I don't know how that would work, but let's assume you could gain that. The only logical way you could gain that would be through some magical bullshit. But that magical bullshit would still be happening for a reason. There still would be a pattern.
Unless you can in some way justify the existence of a non-causational event. So an event that can occur without the need of a cause. Which is a difficult thing to get your head around, but I mean, it feels to me like it has to be a possibility. The universe can't have been caused at some point, it has to have just been. You can't find a cause to 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 a cause. It seems to me there has to be some starting point, some sort of spontaneity that can occur, or has occurred, that has led to everything else, that has led to the chain of causation, so on and so forth. And
Well,
if one can occur, perhaps others can occur as well, and that's something, again, that would need to be defined. I'd have to understand
I honestly think-
the universe over and over again.
I also think the human brain cannot even comprehend the beginning.
Maybe.
We can't comprehend something happening without a cause. The universe, singularity, happening without a cause. I don't think our brains are literally capable.
maybe not yet.
See, that's what I was going to say. I think we could, we just can't yet. I think the human brain is capable of a lot more than we can even imagine at the moment. I think we're capable of things that we can't even think up at the moment.
I think one big point of it. Sorry to interrupt, but I think one big point of it. Like, I haven't done it before.
Yeah, we need to work on that.
I need to work on that. You guys are pretty good at it, to be fair. But one big point is in science we accept that nothing can be created. That there's no such thing as a cause without a cause. We just assume that's impossible. It was probably Einstein or Hawkins or whoever, but we in the 21st century assume causation is true and everything has to have a cause.
But it also seems just as incoherent to say that things have always been.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying we can't. If we believe that there's no such thing as spontaneousness, then we cannot even comprehend the start of a universe. But if we accept that there is such thing as spontaneousness, then we can't even study science anymore.
Well, no,
because things can be spontaneous.
Yeah, but it may have a very specific nature, and a nature that we can almost define and try to understand. The things we see around us, they're all causational because we exist within a caused whatever, or the scenario in which a spontaneous occurrence can occur is so rare or so specific, or who knows. But either we have to say that the universe has been around forever, or something has been around forever, which is a very difficult pill to swallow.
The most common answer to that is it's in a loop. It's in an infinite loop.
But even a loop needs something to start the loop, to create the loop.
Does it?
Where does the loop begin?
It's a ring. It doesn't begin, it starts itself.
Yeah,
you know?
but then Hawkins' new theory is similar to that, the non-boundary proposal. I can't remember what it's like, but he basically, there's some proposal that there's no beginning, and he rules out creating from it, and he says that it's it's something going in a circle this way,
But
and
again,
then time explodes out that
but
way.
still,
and that's where our universe.
our
has
brains
come from.
can't even comprehend this. Like, how can there not be a star? How can it be infinite? That's
we
impossible.
will be able to, and I also think maybe we don't have free will yet, but somewhere down the line we can gain the ability to act freely. Maybe this is determined for now in the Master's
Well,
plan.
surely it's determined that
And
we're going to
then
get free will.
Exactly.
So free will wouldn't be still wouldn't be free
maybe,
will.
Maybe it is determined.
But then free will wouldn't be free will because it's
It
determined.
would be free will from that point.
But how could it be free will?
Because what if it was determined by someone or something that had free will?
Logically, free will is. Fully stand by. Free will is logically impossible.
That's because your definition of free will is wrong. I think that's about all we went over before we got cut off anyway.
Yeah.
I think this is a good point.
This idea of non-causational events is something I really want to find out about more.
Spontaneousness.
I like this. This gave us more to think about as well.
Yeah. Can something
Unless
exist
anyone
without
has
cause?
anything else to say.
We used to believe that spontaneous combustion was real. Imagine that.
I think that might be a thing.
Is it not real? Do people not just
No, because
set
there has
fire?
to be a cause.
Oh.
Oh yeah, it's not
Okay.
just like, hey
Yeah.
motherfucker, I'm on fire
Once
now.
upon a
Yeah.
time, we believed that spontaneous
Oh,
combustion
yeah.
was possible.
Yeah.
But it seems to be possible to burst into flames.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not spontaneous. There's a cause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Causal combustion.
No matter how hard it is to find, there's a cause. Man,
Well,
shall we just end it there?
Yeah.
Okay, what's that outro going to be then?
So that was the podcast.
Just talk shit for a couple of minutes. That can be the outro.
So what do we learn from this experience? Firstly, we need to be careful of these computers fucking pausing our recording. Sorry about
Because it
that.
came up with the bit where I wanted to shut down.
Yeah, I should have. I wasn't even thinking about it, like if I should check it or not. But
Yeah.
I think I've zoomed in now, so it's a lot easier to see when it is recording.
Yeah.
So I'll have to make a mental note to do that next time. Sorry, lads.
Apart from that, I don't think we've learned anything.
We need. Well, no, but we've opened lots of questions. We need to figure out a system of not talking over each other.
Definitely.
That's why I started putting my hand up
Yeah.
towards the end.
That's a
because
good
it's just
call.
like-
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, it still needs to feel like a free discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mind too much as long as no one's being a dick about it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think it's good. I think we've done well. Let's listen.
Well,
to
yeah.
it.
If we listen back to it, and it's all Will talking. Then we know that there's been some sort of
And then we'll
disparity.
We'll put it out there for the free
It doesn't
world
matter.
to judge us.
I just interrupted again. It doesn't matter if I'm constantly talking, mate. You fucking owned my arse earlier. You completely
Yeah,
wrecked
except
me.
I don't know if it was recorded. For
And I
fuck's
went,
sake.
oh wait, no, never mind.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I
might
think
not.
that was recorded.
This is why I take
Keep it
notes,
away
you see.
with
And
it.
never mind, I'm always right. This is evidence.
Right. Thank you for listening. If you
If you
are
did,
listening,
yeah.
if this even goes out, I'll probably send it to a few people. Shout out to the people I send it to.
We hope
Fuck
you've enjoyed our philosophy and apparently scientific podcast.
Yeah. Oh, and I've been Matthew,
I'm Thomas.
And I'm Howard.
and that was the Philosophy Podcast.
DJ.
DJ.